What's up guys, my name is Ace, and Season 4 Reloaded came with a handful of weapon balancing, and instead of just reading the patch notes out to you guys, today I'm going to be showing you guys exactly what changed before and after to see how much of an impact these changes really had. Before we get into that though, just a quick note for those that missed my pinned comment in yesterday's video. That UAV bug that I've been talking about for the past month or so has finally been acknowledged by the devs, and therefore we can expect a fix for it at some point, hopefully in the near future. But it's good to know that they're now at least aware of this issue. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the weapon balancing, and we're going to start this off with the ISO 45. This one actually caught the biggest nerf out of all the guns in this update. With this, the first thing is our hipfire spread was increased, so this is a nerf. We're going to be less accurate with hipfire. We saw a 20% increase when stationary, and a 7.5% increase to our hipfire spread when moving. So that is quite noticeable. This gun's not going to be as good when hipfiring. But more importantly, they nerfed the close range damage values, and they also nerfed all of our headshot damage values with this. And especially with that close range damage nerf, this is going to have a big impact on this gun because it no longer has a 3-shot kill potential to the body. Whereas previously, we could get an insane time to kill potential with a 3-shot kill. In saying this though, even with a 4-shot kill, it's got a fairly competitive time to kill at 201 milliseconds. So it's not like they completely killed this gun, it's just no longer as ridiculously powerful up close as it used to be. And even after that headshot damage nerf, this gun still benefits greatly from mixing headshots in with body shots. If you want to get that 3-shot kill now, all you have to do is mix a headshot in, and you can still do that. So while this was definitely a noticeable nerf to the ISO, and it's no longer that absolutely dominant gun in close quarter situations, it's still a very solid SMG. I think it just fits into the meta a little bit more appropriately now. As for the other SMG that was adjusted with this update, this is the Vaznev 9K. This one got a very slight nerf. This is to that second damage range, or our 4-shot kill range. Previously, this was 18.5 meters, and that has now been cut down to about 16.3 meters. So fairly minor adjustment, but it's going to make it just slightly worse at those mid-ranges. Now, let's move on to the assault rifles, and the first one that got a bit of a nerf here is the Kastov 7.62. With this, they just nerfed the headshot damage profile across the board. And essentially what this means is headshots are not really worth going for. In the past, in some of the damage ranges, just one headshot mixed in with body shots would reduce the number of shots to kill. Now that's no longer the case. You're going to need to get at least 2 headshots mixed in with body shots, and at that point it's probably not worth it to try to hit headshots. You're better off just aiming for the torso or upper torso now. Now on top of that, there was a slight nerf to our aim down sight speed as well. This was very minor though. It went from 270 milliseconds up to about 280 milliseconds. So a couple slight nerfs to the Kastov 7.62, but overall, still a very solid assault rifle. I'm definitely still going to be using it. Next, let's get into the Kastov 74U. And this one saw a similar nerf. Our headshot damage profile was nerfed. And with this one, we not only lose that 2-shot headshot potential up close, but now in nearly every range you find yourself in, you're going to need at least 3 headshots mixed in with body shots in order to change the number of shots to kill. And at that point, headshots are essentially completely useless now with this gun. Don't even think about trying to hit the head. It's pointless. Just aim for the body. But on top of this, we also saw a very, very slight nerf to our hipfire spread. When standing still, there was no measurable change here whatsoever. However, when you are moving at full speed, you will see a roughly 5% increase to our hipfire spread. At the end of the day, this one you'll probably never even notice. So again, just like with the Kastov 7.62, I would say the 74U is still an incredible gun to be using if you're just aiming at the body like you would normally be doing anyways. It's just now with this gun, headshots are basically useless. And then finally for assault rifles, the TAQ-56 also got a headshot damage nerf. And just like with the Kastov 74U, this makes headshots effectively useless with the TAQ-56 now. It is absolutely not worth going for headshots. You're barely dealing any extra damage compared to upper torso shots with this. And the only situation where headshots are going to help is at extremely long ranges. If you mix 2 headshots in with upper torso shots, you can reduce the number of shots to kill. But again, just like with the other guns, that doesn't make the TAQ-56 useless, it just makes headshots useless on the TAQ-56. Now, let's move on to the shotguns, and several of the shotguns saw some adjustments, but a lot of these adjustments you can't even really visualize. It's just going to have an effect on consistency within ranges. But the first one to talk about here is the KV broadside down at the bottom. With this one, I wasn't able to measure any noticeable change when it comes to our 1-shot or 2-shot kill potentials. However, they did mention they increased the mid-range damage, so within that 2-shot kill range, it may be a little bit more consistent at getting a 2-shot kill. But that's about it with that one. Then with both the Bryson 800 and Bryson 890, their one-shot kill ranges were very slightly reduced. But outside of that, they should be performing pretty much the same overall. I don't think you'll notice any massive changes with those. And then finally, with the Expedite 12, again, with this one, we didn't see any changes to its actual range values, but they increased the damage to the head and upper torso, and therefore you can get a little bit more consistency with that one-shot kill, for instance, if you're aiming a little bit higher on the body. So honestly, no really significant changes to any of the shotguns here. However, there were a couple other adjustments to some of the shotguns. With the Bryson 890, they increased our aim down sight movement speed by about 4.2%, which is pretty solid. So you can aim down sight and strafe a little bit faster with that. And with the Expedite 12, they reduced our aim down sight time from 320 milliseconds down to 300 milliseconds. And our hip spread across the board was reduced by about 5%, so we see a bit of a tighter spread there. Overall, these are some nice little buffs to the Expedite 12. After that, let's get into the marksman rifle category, and the Tempus Torrent saw some nerfs. With this, nearly all of our damage values were reduced aside from at the minimum damage range, so like the longest ranges possible. However, at 100 HP, these are all negligible changes. None of them are actually going to change the number of shots to kill, so this one was clearly targeted more for Warzone. However, we did also see a nerf to our aim down sight time from 310 milliseconds up to 350 milliseconds, and that one will be noticeable in all modes, including regular multiplayer. So unfortunately, this gun isn't going to be quite as good if you're trying to play a bit more aggressively with it. Then with the EBR-14, they reduced its aim down sight movement speed by about 3.5%. It's a little bit slower, but I mean, it's so slow to begin with, I don't think this really matters all that much. And also, they mentioned a hip strafe speed reduction. However, based on my testing, this was actually a very, very slight increase by about 0.5%. In either case, you're not likely to notice either one of these changes. But then with the Lockwood Mark II, they actually very, very slightly buffed its aim down sight time. This only appeared to be about a 5 millisecond improvement though, so you probably won't be noticing those. But they also buffed our movement speeds across the board by quite a noticeable amount actually. Our base movement speed saw a 3.7% increase. Our aim down sight movement speed saw an almost 7% increase, which is quite noticeable. And our sprint speed's about 3.6% faster. So overall, these are some nice and noticeable improvements to the Lockwood Mark II. And then finally, we have the SAB-50. And with this one, they also mentioned a movement increase, but they didn't specify what changed. It turns out our base movement speed increased by 2.4%. Our aim down sight movement speed increased by just over 4%, which is fairly nice. However, our sprint movement speed was very, very slightly reduced by about 1/3%. You'll probably never notice that change at all. But I just wanted to point out that was technically a bit of a nerf to the sprint speed. Overall, I really don't understand why they buffed the SAB-50. This is arguably the best marksman rifle in the entire game right now. And while I wouldn't be calling for any nerfs or anything to the SAB-50, I definitely don't think it needed any buffs. In either case, that is going to wrap it up for the weapon-specific weapon balancing changes. However, just a couple other notes here. When it comes to semi-autos and burst rifles, they've removed the ability to oversample on the trigger. So essentially, in the past, if you had a really good trigger finger with a semi-auto and you were spamming it way too fast, it would end up making it feel like the gun was kind of jamming on you and it wasn't keeping up with your trigger finger. When it comes to this, they just removed that entirely. So the faster your trigger finger, the better off you're going to be. Although there are still rate of fire caps in place, of course. It's just no longer going to end up feeling like the gun is like locking up on you artificially. And another little thing I wanted to mention, since I've seen a few comments on this already, they have adjusted how they calculate those stat bars in the game. So if you pay attention to those, you may have noticed some of those stat bars have changed when the guns themselves haven't actually changed. And this is just a great time to remind you that those stat bars are effectively useless and sometimes even completely misleading. So don't trust those too heavily. They can be used for like a quick comparison if you're like putting an attachment on the gun or you're comparing one gun to another, as long as you're comparing them within the same category. But definitely don't pay too much attention to those stat bars. They're just not a very good tool for deep analysis. And with that, that is finally going to wrap it up for today's video. Overall, nothing really major when it comes to weapon balancing with this update. I'd say the most notable change here was with the ISO 45. It's definitely going to feel noticeably worse than pre-patch, but still pretty decent as a gun. And this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What do you think about the weapon balancing that took place with this Season 4 Reloaded update? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.